What's up everyone, Adam here from Cape Crawlers, and this is the FMS FCX24 build phase 2. Welcome back to the channel everybody. Got a super exciting video for you today. I just got my hands on a whole pile of RC all-wheel drive upgrades for the FCX24. So I've been kind of puttering around with the FCX24 a little bit. If you remember, I did a whole bunch of Trial upgrades, really got a great amount of performance out of it, but now RC all-wheel drive has really stepped up their game when it comes to the upgrades for this thing. And I'm very fortunate to be able to get my hands on some early release products that I'm super excited to share with you guys. We got axle housings, we got high clearance linkage, we got new shocks, steering linkage. Man, we got the whole gamut of stuff for this thing. Brass portal covers, front and back. We got so much stuff. I think this is going to be a game changer for this little rig, and I'm pumped to share it with you guys. So why don't we dive in, take a look at the products that I got, we'll go over it, and then we'll throw them on and see how it goes. So let's open these up one by one here, see what we got. Let's start with these axle housings. So these are brand new. These aren't even available on the website just yet, but I was able to score a set of early releases here. So let's check these, look at these. Look at these red aluminum anodized axle housings. These are going to look so good. Great stuff. Just like their portal axles on the FCX24, the craftsmanship and the quality of these things is excellent. Great fit and finish. Got a set for the front and the rear. They're both exactly the same part number for the front and rear because they use the same axle housings, front and back. Those are going to look great. Next up, look at these shocks. We got long travel shocks here, and I believe this is also the steering linkage. So let's take a look. Oh yeah, what do we got in here? All kinds of stuff in here. Oh, these are the high clearance links. Nice. This is so these are high clearance lower links. Awesome. Very similar style to your traditional FCX24 links. They've got the bend in here so that you're basically flat across the chassis, and then you get a quick bend. Gives you that extra clearance. Get these shocks. Beautiful red anodized shocks here. Super smooth action on these. I wonder if they're longer than the stock shocks. Let's take a look. I'd say they're about the same length as the stock shocks. Really nice and smooth action though. We've got the preload adjustment. We'll see, the springs aren't bad. We'll see if I keep the springs on there or not. Probably not though. Probably go, again, typical droop setup. Might be a good opportunity to kind of play with the springs. Maybe take the stock springs and cut them in half and put them in here. Might be worth playing with. But some nice new shocks. What I really like about what RC all-wheel drive is doing here is that they're providing the pivot balls to go with these things. So if you remember when I installed the linkage on this from Trial, you get rid of your pivot balls on your shocks. So what I had to do is just run a loose positioning on that shock mounting bolt so that that shock can pivot on the mount. But what RC all-wheel drive has done is it's given you brand new pivot balls to go with your shocks to mimic the stock setup, which actually worked really good. Let's see, here we got, this is our new upper links. These are replacement Y links. Yeah, right. And then there's our new steering linkage right there. So very nice. So we've got RC all-wheel drive steering linkage. Here's our Y links. So you know the Trial replaces the Y-link with two individual links here. So this goes back to the Y-link, which mimics the stock setup. So it'll be interesting to see how they compare when you get those on there. Now for the exciting stuff. Here we have rear portal covers, front portal covers. So this is going to be very cool. Now these I'm really excited for a bunch of reasons. I'll tell you why. One is that I've got front and rear. You know, right now I've only got the treel covers on the front, but so this will do the rear as well. But I'm really excited about the fronts because they're the complete housing. So, you know, the treel, it's hard to see without taking the tire off, but the treel is just a big brass cover that bolts onto the outside. This is actually the complete portal housing. And what I really like about this is that I think it should be stronger from a mounting position because I'm stripping out bolts on the plastic portals here. So the bolts go in through the brass, and I'm having trouble tightening the covers up because they're just not threading anymore. So I'm hoping with the complete brass housings, I'll be able to tighten these things reliably and consistently all around all four corners, which I'm kind of running into issues with now. Yeah, look at these. These are sharp. Very nice. I love that finish. There, it's a bolt together like that. So you get a complete unit right there. So it'll sit on the housing just like that. I want to see how much they weigh. Let's see. So the one thing about the treel units is they were very heavy. They were 18 grams a piece for the treel. So let's see what a complete housing from these guys weighs. 14 grams. So we do sacrifice some weight going with this setup, but again, I think it's going to be worth it because I get the brass, complete brass housing that I'll be able to tighten reliably and not strip out optimistically. That's the goal here. Let's see how much let's check out the rears and we'll put them on the scale too. All right, these nice, big, just so good fit and finish on these things. They just look so nice. Wicked happy with these things. All right, let's put these guys on the scale too. So 15 grams for the rear. So we're going to give up a little bit of weight in the front, but we're going to gain 15 grams in each corner on the rear. So this is going to be good. So I think it'll all work out. And again, complete housing. So you get the brass to thread into to get rid of those stripping issues that I'm running into. Really love what RC all-wheel drive is doing with these parts, both for, you know, the 24s and other scales that they're doing. They just do a great job, really stepping up their game in the parts that they're offering. I'm really happy with all their stuff. This is real awesome. I'm pumped to put these on. All right, let's do some test runs here. This is our current setup. Shoot, still no problem. Give old Hell's Gate a try. I don't think this has ever made it up Hell's Gate. Oh. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen this time around either. Let's try the escalator. All right, we got that pretty easy. So there's a good baseline. Oh boy, look at our FCX24 now. Holy moly, these upgrades look fantastic, huh? Wow, I'm just so impressed with this thing. Look at these gorgeous axle housings, the anodized red aluminum. Look at the shocks to match, the front housing too. Oh my goodness, this came out so nice. What a difference. I am impressed. This thing is just super impressive right now. So let's talk about what I did and kind of what my thoughts are thus far. I have not run it yet. I'm very excited to run it, but I wanted to go over the upgrades and kind of talk about them for a little bit before we get it on the track. So let's flip it over. Let's take a look at this thing. So just total Iron Man look right now. Look at the red, looks so good. So I did the housings front and back. You know, it's got the aluminum housings. These are just fantastic. It's got the brass portal covers, both inner and outer on the rear. I did the inner brass housings on the front, and I actually kept my Treel outer housings because if you remember before we did the install, you know, these are really heavy, nice and heavy, about 18 grams a piece. So just in the interest of keeping that weight and getting as much as I could, I left the Treels on there. And just like I had hoped, the install went fantastic because with these inner portal covers, front and back, I'm able to thread these nice and tight, get the portal covers nice and secure, no bolts stripped, it held together really nicely. So just a good step up in quality and fit and finish with all these upgrades. The linkage, I really like the linkage a lot because these are the high clearance style. You see they're very straight, and then they've got kind of a sharp bend here. And what that does is, you know, when you're over obstacles, it really makes the skid plate here is really the lowest piece, and your linkage is virtually flat all the way across. And then you don't have any clearance issues until you get back to the axles here, pretty much. So these are very functional. Not only do they look great, but they're functional in that regard. The action on these is nice and smooth. Again, with the shocks and the linkage, I did my one O-ring trick where I left one O-ring out at each mounting point just to kind of free up the motion there. But if you remember from the previous FCX24 upgrade video that I did, the Treel linkage that was on there was so tight. These went on so smooth. The action is fantastic. They are much, much, much smoother. And what I really like is that it comes with the pivot balls for your shock mounting and for the linkage. So I think that really aids to the smoothness of the operation. And that was something that I was really missing when I did the conversion with the Treel linkage. It does go back to a Y-link here, which I'm not upset about. I like it either way. I haven't run this yet to see, but it still has tons of articulation. You know, it's still able to clear 5 tires very easily. So it didn't impact the flex or the articulation or anything like that. I really just wanted to throw the whole RC all-wheel drive matching set on here. So I went back to the Y-link, which I honestly think worked better. Again, with the Treels on there, that was just so tight. I felt like the stock linkage worked a little bit better. I did get it sorted out pretty well, but I had to do a lot of finagling to get it there. these worked fantastic right out of the bag, right out of the gate. This thing feels ready to go. Took the springs out of the shocks, again, to get that full droop set up. The springs that came on the shocks weren't bad, but just to get that stance that I like, I opted to do the no springs. And also because I mount these to the frame, so I didn't want to jack up my ride height there. The drive shaft, I took advantage of the time while I had it apart to upgrade the drive shaft. So I remember I stripped the portal gears out in this very early on in ownership, and FMS sent me a new set. They also sent me an upgraded drive shaft, and check this out compared to the stock drive shaft. So this was the unit that came with it. I don't know if you can see that. I'll do a close-up here if you can see that, but look at the difference in the thickness of the two drive shafts here. The new upgraded drive shaft that they've got out now is just about at least two times as thick as the stock drive shaft. Now, I'd heard of some folks snapping drive shafts pretty easy. This thing is much stronger, much beefier. So I was grateful to have the opportunity to throw that on while I had it apart. One other upgrade I did, this is kind of minor, but I was so thankful for it, was these new wheel nuts from Endura. So these are extended wheel nuts. And one of the things that I was complaining about kind of to myself about these wheel nuts that came on this was that I couldn't get it tight enough without scratching up my new RC all-wheel drive wheels. To get the tool in there to really tighten it, it was really like rubbing across the bolts there and stripping off the black paint. Endura released these lengthened wheel nuts, so I must not have been the only one who was having this issue. So now I've got plenty of wheel nut to grab onto with my wrench and get these things nice and tight. They do stick out a little bit more than I was hoping, but I think it's worth it. It's got to do a trade-off there. Do I want to bang up my wheels with that tool and have that constant frustration, or do I want to have these wheel nuts kind of stick out a little bit? I think I'll choose the latter. So overall, I'm super happy with this thing. I think it looks awesome. I'm really excited to try it out. So why don't we get it on the course and do our after runs and see how it fared out. So a quick update here. So I didn't even get to turn the camera on before I started having issues with these. And I could not figure out what was going on. So as soon as I would start going, I'd get a lot of hitching in the back. And as soon as under any load, it would stop turning the back wheels. Sometimes it was one, sometimes it was both. But inevitably, one of them always stopped turning. So I could not figure out what was going on. I took these portals apart. I must have been 10 times. No exaggeration. It had to have been at least 10 times. Back and forth on the course and then again. But anyway, long story short, what I discovered was that the bolts that came with these portal covers are too long. And what was happening is I was tightening them as carefully and methodically as I could, but it would still come loose. And if you see, I don't know if you can see, if I can get this on camera, this is tightened up here. I'll even do it here just to demonstrate. It is definitely, as tight as you want to get them, right? But then as soon as it was under any pressure, it would pop open like that, and then the gears would separate. See that? I don't know if that translates on camera, if you can see it. But it just pops right open because the bolts are too long. It wasn't allowing me to tighten it all the way. So what I've done is I've taken some of these spare O-rings and I put them around each corner of the portal box here. And now it feels like I can get it tight. Tighten these things down. It seems good. So I'm going to try to put the O-rings on this last one, and then we'll see if I can get on the course for you guys. All right, here we are. Upgrades installed. I think I got everything sorted out with the portals. We should be good to go. So let's give it some runs here, see how this goes. Did the shoot pretty well. I can see already I've got some major lift going with these new shocks. Boy, they lift up like crazy compared to the stock ones. Let's try Hell's Gate. Oh, it got it. Nice. Barely. Boy, that front end is out of control, but it made it. All right, try the escalator now. Probably can't see it from that camera angle, but the front end lift is just out of control. Nice. That was pretty clean, all things considering. Okay, so one thing I just did on the fly here, I just moved the shocks in the front back to the original tower positions. So I'm going to see how this does. I think that was significantly better. Let's try Hell's Gate in this setup. Alright, here we are on Hell's Gate here with the setup I've got with the stock locations in the front. Also changed the battery. I felt like I was losing power there, so we'll see how this does. A little bit of a different angle. Hopefully you can see what the front end is doing a little better from this perspective. Much better. Much better. Talk about the results. So first off, let me say, you have those build days that just go super smooth. Everything works together. Everything assembles perfectly and works right off the bat. The Bronco build episode 7, for example, was one of those times. This was not. So this was like a comedy of errors all through the whole assembly process. And I don't fault RC all-wheel drive and their components at all. I think the parts went together fantastic, with the exception of the rear portals, which I just could not get the bolts that came with them to work. I had to do the O-ring thing, and then I actually ended up putting in some smaller bolts that I had just lying around, and thankfully that snugged them up to where they're working perfectly. But got that sorted out, and then getting on the course, lost one of my wheel nuts that I was so proud of right off the bat, and then the pin to the wheel. And then my servo horn stripped out immediately, so I had to rob the servo horn off my son's Power Wagon. So just all of these things last night, I was up until about 1 in the morning trying to sort this thing out, and finally had to call it quits, and then regroup this morning, got it situated, got to run it today, and now I gotta say I'm really happy with it. So with that said, let's talk about running it and the results and kind of my thoughts on the parts and pieces and how they all work together. So I thought it worked really well. It was able to get up Hell's Gate consistently, and especially when I moved the shocks back to the stock tower. That seemed to make a big difference to control that lift. That is one thing that these RC all-wheel drive shocks, they lift, they unload a lot more than the stock shocks did. And I had oil filled the stock shocks, so I'm wondering if that oil kind of helped kind of control that lift, that unloading a little more in the stock shocks, because they're the same length. So I got to think it's just something to do with the shock action itself. But anyway, I love how these shocks look. They work fantastic. The action on them is super smooth. They don't bind at all. They work excellent. So I really like the shocks regardless. It's just going to take me a little bit to tune them to where I want. And moving them back to the stock tower seems to have controlled that lift enough where it climbs really well and still has a good range of articulation, I feel. So that's probably the optimal setup with these right now. The alternative is to retrofit some sort of limiting strap and move the shocks back to that angled position where I was at. But I'll work on that. That's some of the tinkering that I'll do in the future. The linkage, the high clearance linkage works fantastic. These links and shocks and everything work so well together. I'm so grateful to have the pivot ball hardware included in these that mimics the stock action. These work really, really smooth right off the bat. I did do the one O-ring trick on all the linkage like I usually do, which probably helped, but I can tell you that, apples to apples, these were much smoother operating than the Trio linkage that I had on there. The anodized red axles, oh my goodness, these things are just gorgeous. It really gives it kind of a gladiator build vibe. This anodized red against the blue just looks fantastic, and combine that with the black and red wheels, man, this thing just looks gorgeous with these parts on here. So I am beyond excited with how it looks. I think it made a huge transformation from an appearance standpoint and looks fantastic. And once I kind of sorted out the shocks and swapped out a fresh battery and then kind of did some freestyle runs with this thing, like going around in the hot tub and up and around some other lines, it really, really worked well. So I'm anxious to get this out on the rocks and in some different situations because I think it's going to be a really good performer when I get it out there. So just a cool setup right now. I'm pretty impressed. I ditched my roll cage. I was really partial to that roll cage, but I think it looks pretty solid as it is. I'll probably leave it off for now, so we'll see. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the build right now. It was a frustrating start, but a great finish. I gotta say that. So very pumped to have access to these kind of prototype parts. I'm beta testing a lot of these parts for RC all-wheel drive right now, including these axle housings and things. So I'm really grateful to them for sending them over for me to try, and I'm really pumped with them. So I think their lineup for the FCX24 is going to be excellent, and these are quality parts, and I'm super stoked to have them. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think of the build and the performance? I think we're headed in the right direction. This thing's getting more and more capable. Just to get the chassis sorted out a little bit more, but I definitely want to hear your thoughts. So stay tuned as we're going to keep working on this thing. I'm going to see what else RC all-wheel drive and some other manufacturers have up their sleeve. I'm going to keep building this thing out, and then I think I might do a shootout between the built FCX24 and a built SCX24. We've done the stock to stock comparison. Maybe we should do a built to built comparison. Let me know your thoughts down below. As always, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you then.